Alrighty, guys, thanks so much for tuning into the Holo Health podcast. Super excited that you're here listening. It is just me today. Alex, my main man Trevor, is not going to be able to join us. So Trevor, shout out, we miss you. But instead, I am joined by a special guest today that probably needs no introduction, but I'll introduce her anyway. Mary Jo, how do you say your last name, Mary Jo?
It's Rodrigue.
Rodrigue. I always want to throw an S, S on it.
Everybody does.
Yeah, I was say you probably get that a lot.
Yeah.
Why don't, for maybe the one or two people who don't know who you are, Mary Jo, tell us just a little bit about yourself so we can kind of paint the picture of all things Mary Jo.
Okay. And as it relates to health, probably too, right? Just in general. Okay, cool.
However you want to take it.
Sounds good. So I'm Mary Jo. I live in South Carolina with my husband, Mark. I've connected with you, Alex, through, my brother, and just fitness stuff with him, and then just connecting on our approach to health and fitness and coaching and, teaching people how to connect to Jesus with fitness and all of that kind of thing. And just a passion for that. I have had health coaching. I'm a personal trainer, but have done that in some capacity since 2015. And have had a health coaching business that I pretty much primarily have worked with women I've always described it as find freedom with food, just because that connects to my story a little bit. And just help them, as y'all talk about on your podcast and everything you do, just navigate the very confusing world of fitness and all the messages that are out there to figure out how on earth to do this in a way that, glorifies God, as I've been able to incorporate that with clients, but then also just in a way that makes sense for people who are living like an actual real life. So that's, I guess, a quick nutshell of it.
I think that was great. We quickly hit it off, Mary Jo, because we have a mutual contact. Your brother is one of my friends.
Yes.
And he's like, hey, you should talk with my sister. And immediately we were aligned just with vision and applications. And like, hey, we have the same passions over here at Holo Health and what you're doing as well, which is where this kind of started of like, hey, let's at least hop on a podcast, which is why I'm super excited for this conversation.
Yeah.
I would love to back up all the way until like even before 2015 on what got you like into health and fitness originally, maybe a little bit of your backstory on just where did that passion come from?
Yes. Okay. So it came out of nowhere is how I feel like, because I was not interested in I danced growing up, but I don't have any kind of sports background. And towards the end of college, I pretty much found myself I was definitely overweight. I was unhealthy. I did not exercise, and I was very confused and didn't know what to do. I would try, I'd run for a week and then hate it and stop. With food, I had no direction at all of where to start, what healthy meant. And anytime you look for stuff like that, even then, it was very confusing because everybody gets religious in their camp of what you should do and what you shouldn't do and all this kind of stuff. So and I had a lot of, because of that, body image issues. Growing up, I struggled with my weight. There were even times in high school I tried to diet and lose weight. I think I did Nutrisystem, that meal service in 10th grade.
Yeah, I remember.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, gosh. I think it's still out there. But so there was always kind of this, I loved food and I love to eat and I still do. And so it was a lot of portion control was a lot of my problem. And then just not even having any kind of bearings on what that meant or what that looked like in a direction that was good. So, towards the end of college, I ended up finding weight training. I think I did a program off of bodybuilding.com, which was huge then. And, ended up falling into a gym there in Gainesville where I went to school that was, very bodybuilding focused. So I kind of got sucked into that realm for a couple of years, competed in, bodybuilding for just 2 seasons. It wasn't too long.
Wait, you competed in bodybuilding competitions?
I did. Did you not know that?
I didn't. Yes. No, I did not know that.
Yes.
That's awesome. What year was that?
2014 and 2015. I did 2 seasons or whatever. So yeah, it was very cool in a lot of ways. I learned a lot during that process because of it just kind of sucks you in. But and I think I've heard you say this before, relating on I'm a very all or nothing person, and when it's channeled in great ways, it's great, and when it's not, and so it definitely plays on that bodybuilding in general because it's so much you just go hard, you know, and CrossFit's similar, I think. Any type of, not a lot of people like to call bodybuilding a sport, but it is in a way. It's a
Oh,
challenge.
for sure. For
Um,
sure. I would.
so yes, yeah. So I really, I enjoyed the like kind of grind of that, I guess we'll say. So, but that turned into another slew of things of kind of going from being in an unhealthy place and then learning all this stuff about nutrition and weight training and the ability to manipulate your body fat percentage in a way. And I love
Yeah.
control. And so it was kind of this whole uh, evolution of things that happened to where after I, you know,
Yeah.
at the end of my second season competing, I was just very obsessed with staying lean, very obsessed with, you know, never going backwards. I think was a big fear of just like, you know, I knew what it was like to feel bigger and like out of control. And this was the opposite of that, small and in control. And I definitely, and this kind of really morphed into a lot of my messaging with my business of, your body makes a really poor God is how I like to describe it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
reaching those goals and being in a certain place, like I really felt empty. Like there's one specific situation where kind of this was like, I see it as the Lord kind of teaching me this specific lesson of, I was in a room, and it sounds awful to even say this, but I was like the leanest person in the room. And I just remember thinking, everyone in here is happier than me. Like, what's the problem?
Wow.
And
Wow.
yeah, it was a very like I can literally almost smell the room I was standing in. That's how like pivotal
Wow.
this was. And I was like, okay, this is not the way type of thing. So there was a long process of that, of just kind of being like, you know, your identity cannot be found in how you look. Definitely not, of course. And I had to go through a deep period with that, of coming out of that, and then competing just, you know, wasn't the right path for me to stay on to encourage
Sure.
a healing process out of that mindset. So I don't
Sure.
blame competing. I think it just was, it was like a tool that it really did teach me a lot. So it's been very helpful as far as, you know, like wanting to share that message with other women, because it is it's a hard thing not to get focused on, because women do tie it to, once I'm a certain weight, I'll be happy. Or, you know, once I reach this goal. So, so from there, kind of came out of that. And then my business, you know, grew from then, and it was just mainly connecting with women on that kind of score. And yeah, I think it's just kind of progressed from there.
Sure. Sure. I would love to go back. Mary Jo, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that piece.
Of course.
Before I kind of like dig into specific pieces there, I would love to hear how your faith intertwined through that all. Like, did you grow up in a faith environment? Did you find that in the middle of the season? How did, like, you talked about control a lot. Where did like your relationship with Jesus fall into all of that?
So I grew up in just a very Bible believing home is how I like to describe it. I love my parents. My brother is, as you know him, he has always been like an amazing example to me. I was more of had a rebellious phase, and Jordan was just like the shining light. So,
and he still is. Shout out to Jordan.
He is. Shout out.
He's a saint.
So he is. He's the best brother ever. So, I gave my life to the Lord very early on, and then, you know, went through struggles as we all do, just kind of growing up and, you know, becoming a young adult or whatever. And so within as it relates to health and just kind of intertwining with that, I don't think I quite realized, like, yes, I like control, and, you know, always, of course, like, you know, we know we're not really in control. Like, God is in control. We think we can control things. And so we try, and like, you know, there's kind of that dance, but I think it ended up being, you know, like I had mentioned, a very pivotal lesson of not being in control and where you find your worth. Because even though like I believed in Jesus and like had trusted him, and my faith, you know, was there. And I don't think it was so easy for me to get distracted, it felt like, into putting all my value and worth in what I look like. And because there is a way that you can like kind of, you feel like you can control it because you see change.
Sure.
I think that was just a real test of being like, okay, you know, here's a very real example of this is, you know, your value can't be found in this. And there's no fulfillment in it, really. I mean, yes, it's satisfying to reach goals, but it's not the same as what you find when you put, you know, your value is found in the Lord and who he's made you to be, and, you know, who he says you are. There's no comparison. So.
Amen. One thing that stood out to me, Mary Jo, was just the violent swing of you tried all the diet trends, you felt chronically ill, you might have been a little overweight, then ideal, and then you swung into all the other side and went all in over here and went all the way to the point of bodybuilding competitions, that
Yeah.
your body was an idol, the weight was a pursuit, like you're saying, that value. What do you think that like shift did to you? Like, because it was
Oh.
from here all the way over here. And I'm a big proponent that truth is really found in either ends of the spectrum. A lot of
Hmm.
times it's in that messy middle
Yes.
of like, yes, our body is not a temple, but it's still something to steward well. I don't
Right.
want to be overweight, but I don't want to idolize it and
Yeah.
glamorize it. Like, I want to steward it well. Like,
Hmm.
what did you learn in like that time?
Ooh, that's a fun question. Um, maybe what you said with it being in the middle, because, and I know y'all talk about this at Holo Health, like there's nothing wrong with not wanting to hate what you see in the mirror, of course. Like, we
Right.
want to feel confident and good. Um, but I guess maybe the having been on both ends of the extreme, I felt like then the middle was like, oh, this is probably the best place to be. I'm not really sure if that
Sure.
answers the question, but
No,
um, yeah, it
I think
gave
it
me
does
a
for
good
sure.
insight. Yeah.
I think it does for sure, because you realize that both ends are not best.
Right?
Like
Yes.
being chronically ill or in just a suboptimal place of like physical health. And
Hmm.
obviously we're primarily focusing on physical health in this
Right.
conversation, even though that there's other components to it. And then on the other side, like we've reached pinnacle physical health success with
Right.
body fat percentage and competitions and accolades and just looks and aesthetics. It's like, wait a
Hmm.
minute. Like you said, I'm the leanest in this room, but I'm the most unhappy. Which
Yes.
is why here at Holo Health, we say, hey, our vision is that you can like what you see in the mirror, but
Hmm.
love the peace you feel,
Yeah.
because health is holistic. Like you
Right.
said, I've been there as well. Like, I didn't eat sugar for 6 months and I got down to
Get it.
like 5% body fat and
Yeah.
just did it. But I was like, why do I still feel the same?
Right.
But
Yeah.
like, wait a minute. Your body, like you said, your body's not a god.
Mm-mm.
It's meant to serve God, and we steward it well so that when we are healthy, we can go ahead and connect with God better, love other people better. I mean, I'm just kind of going down the whole
No, I
health
love
rant
it.
now.
Go on the rant.
Um, so I would love to kind of pick back up, Mary Jo,
Hmm.
on, I mean, ultimately what led us to create Whole Health was we saw a problem that we wanted to solve. Same thing
Hmm.
with you. Your personal story is like, hey, I want to help people overcome this, help people experience something that I did so they never have to do. I would love to kind of transition more into how you're helping people and just in that capacity. So tell us a little bit about your business
Hmm.
and that kind of side of things.
Yeah. So business wise, I think I mentioned this, but it was just kind of born from, and really even talking about the two extremes, that is really what it was. It was, there's been many posts on Instagram I'm thinking of now where I would compare leanest to biggest and be like, neither of these, like
Wow.
happiest is here, like where it's,
Yes.
not on either end of that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, over the years, most of the women that I've connected with have probably been on one side or the other.
Sure.
And so that has been cool with just having both perspectives, because it's, not that I'm somebody special, but like it is unique to have both sides of to have the both ends of the spectrum. But that has been very helpful, I guess, and God using it, I suppose, to be able to
Sure.
connect with people over the years. And so my primary focus has, I exclusively work with women. And over the years, I think the way it's changed, maybe that's a direction we could go with this, is, I was maybe early 20s when I started, and kind of as it's evolved over the years and as I've, gotten older, kind of my main like client base has kind of grown with me, if you will. So like seeing the different struggles and things that come up as you get into your 20s, and people getting married and having children and, postpartum and that sort of thing. That's been cool to see, and just to see the different challenges that life like kind of throws at you, like as you move through your journey of, because like I like to say this a lot, like fitness is forever. Like there's not an end destination.
Yeah.
Like it has
Yeah.
to constantly change because life does. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but
Yeah. No, I think that definitely does. So I want to kind of dive into your practical experience with specifically coaching.
mm-hmm.
What have you found have been some common misunderstandings of health throughout the years of coaching with a lot of your clients? Because you said many of them are either on either side of the spectrum. They're
Mm-hmm.
what we say, they glamorize the body and make it an
Right.
idol, or they demonize the body and make it insecurity. It's on either ends.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of those underlying misunderstandings or misconceptions that people start a coaching relationship with you that you're like, hey, we really need to debunk that and process that and dig into that? What are some off the top of your head?
Okay. One for sure is kind of what I mentioned with the once I get here, I'll be happy.
The destination mindset.
Yes. And thinking that, once I lose this 20, 30 pounds, like, then I'll be able to really start living. And
Sure.
they maybe don't even verbalize it quite like that, but it's kind of like underlying, and so almost every single person I've ever had to work with, we've always had to kind of reframe the process of what we're doing and, and like the reality of it. Because, once you get there and even for me, and reaching certain goals, like it doesn't fulfill you when you make it an idol. And I don't, people don't actively make things idols. A lot of the time I feel like, but that's what it ends up being. So that's a huge one. The other thing too, both ends of the spectrum are just anybody. And I think this is like common messaging with just like diet culture and things. There's so much fear around food. And people just being terrified, like on the obsessive, like I want to be so tiny side. It's like fear of amount and fear of, they have their own things. And then on the other side, I think it's like lack of understanding and knowledge and control in the sense of like even portions and that fear driving like a punishment mindset. And so then they're in a spectrum of like, okay, well, I punish, restrict. So then I like swing the other way and I like get a bag of Doritos or whatever it is. And so it's that the fear around food has been a very interesting thing to deal with. So, and I had it myself. So.
Yeah, you can speak from experience. I think you hit some gold there as far as the destination mindset, just their perspective and definition of health in general, the fear of food that you talked about. And the one I kind of want to hone in here on is the view that it's punishment. I liked the phrase that you said, when we start reframing it. Like we say redefining it, or really just changing your perspective or your paradigm. I like to use the word paradigm. It's how you see, it's the lens you look through, right? How do you practically do that? Like when you're coaching one-on-one, you hear someone like, I'm eating my kale salad as a punishment of what I did yesterday in the Super Bowl. Like, how are you practically helping me reframe that?
Right. So here's what I feel like this might be, it's almost an indirect way I feel like that I've watched a lot of clients, and I've almost called it like a nutrition evolution that I kind of watch people go through. Because initially what I try to do, because, just like y'all talk about, focus on primarily whole, healthy foods, all of that kind of stuff, like nutrition matters, what you're eating matters, like a donut's not the same as an apple, all of that kind of stuff. But what I've found with a lot of people when they come with so much fear around certain foods, they first almost have to like get rid of that before they can evaluate food for what it is and like why they should care, if that makes sense. And so what I usually try to help people do is be like, okay, like what is a food you're afraid of that you absolutely love, for example, and we'll just a donut someone will take, or a cookie or whatever.
Mine is Oreos. I'll be vulnerable.
Perfect. I love it. I love Oreos too. Have you ever had the like mega stuffed ones, like the most stuff? I think it's called.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
Finally they made one that was okay. So an Oreo.
Kryptonite.
So it is. So, and there are some people that like, if it is their like, like food where they're like, I can't stop. Like, that's not really what I'm talking about necessarily always. But if there is something that has a lot of fear around it and people are like, well, I can't ever eat that, or I can't be healthy. Like they see it as one or the other.
Sure.
I try to help remove that by showing them how to incorporate it within a day of, like an example day of eating or something that would show you how to incorporate it to where like, you're still going to be able to see progress and have this in your diet. So I like being able to do that and to give them a practical picture of like what a balanced day of eating could look like. That includes an Oreo, but maybe not a sleeve of Oreos because that's a little difficult.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so from there, they're able to start like just looking at things from a different perspective. And then it helps them see like, okay, I can have this Oreo. It doesn't mean I can't reach fitness goals, but also like now I can say, why do I care about the nutrients in a sweet potato? Why do I care about the salad? Why do I care if I have that? Like, what's it doing for me that is different? Because I've just found people have a huge roadblock when there's fear and they see any foods that that are being forced upon them as like the
Sure.
only answer. And then it just creates this weird relationship. I don't know, with all
Yes.
food. It's very strange.
I love what you said as far as like, I asked, like, how do you redefine that? How do you help someone overcome that?
Yeah.
That behind every behavior is a belief, right? I believe this food is bad, so I'm going to avoid it. I've talked to my mom about just habit change and transformation before, and she has this working theory that in order to change the belief behind the behavior, not the only way, but one way to change the belief behind the behavior is to have the same experience with a different outcome. Meaning,
Yes.
I'm going to have the same experience of Oreos are in my house. You're going to teach me how I can eat them in moderation and still have a well-balanced diet working towards my goals. So my different outcome is, wow, I had Oreos and I'm still trending towards my goals rather than binging or falling off the wagon, whatever.
Yes.
So now it's reframing my belief of, wow, I can actually fit this into my nutrition plan. I can fit this into eating clean throughout the day and not view it as all or nothing, bad, a punishment, the fear behind it. You're just talking about reframing that mind. And I like what you said. You have the information piece, like the truth, like, hey, here's what reality is, but also the application piece. Like, hey, let me show you what this is. Because information plus application equals transformation. We need to know, we need to do, so we can actually change. So everything you're saying is just aligned so well with kind of what we preach here too. Mary Jo, when it comes to these relationships and even just people you talk with in general, how do you intersect Jesus into people's pursuit of health?
I think the biggest, and I've shared with you before too, that I love what y'all are doing because it does target, it is very like interested in helping the church and people who are professing believers. And, I've worked with clients who are and who aren't. And so my main way that I feel I have been able to put it in there is the sorry, I lost that train of thought.
You're good.
Putting it in there to where your fulfillment needs to be found in the Lord, in your relationship with him, the value piece, more than necessarily the nutrition piece, like as a starting point. When I am able to speak to it, I have been able to discuss, like, of course we want to honor our bodies. They are a gift from God, like y'all talk about temple of the Holy Spirit, all of that kind of stuff. And our body needs to be nourished in order to function properly. So kind of both sides of that, I feel like have been the entry points, I guess, for us to have discussions and how they tie together at all. Because as you've said, there's a disconnect there. People don't really connect. They see it as health over here.
Separate. Yeah. I like that you said where you start with more of the value piece rather than the food piece, because we'll eventually get there. And we say that truly healthy people express their health or pursue health not for their identity but from their identity. That I have coached so many people see them regularly of they're coming to the gym or they're trying to lose weight looking for something, that peace, that satisfaction, that value of like, wow, this is what I've been hoping for, but it's fleeting, it's temporary, it's non-reliable, it's hard because, like we said, we've reached there, we've done it, both me and you personally. We're like, wait a minute, that's not what it is. But Trevor and I like to say that the first two steps are knowing who God is, like he is a perfect father, because his identity informs our identity. Like we are perfect sons and daughters because of who he is. We now know who I am. And because we have those two correct perspectives, we now can pursue what health is, the correct understanding of health, which is now we're talking about sleeping and movement and exercise and relationships and faith and purpose. But we can't do that if our identity is in our weight, or our identity is in an unhealthy relationship, or identity is in our job or our reputation, which is why we try to start there. Because I have counseled and coached and had conversations with years of people that have just done some of these because they're trying to anchor themselves to an anchor that shouldn't be an anchor. So anyway, sorry, Mary Jo, I'm getting on my soapbox.
I love it. Preach.
Come on. Question. I want to get practical here. What does a day in the life of Mary Jo look like? What do you practically do to steward your health in every area? Like physically, we could obviously talk several minutes on there, but
Yep.
also relationally, you're
Hmm.
married, you have family, spiritually, even though health is holistic and we're just one embodied faith, we still have specific habits. What do
Right.
you personally do that you feel like moves the needle the most?
Okay. It's probably going to sound familiar to the things that you teach, but no, sleep's a big one. That's been a huge, I feel like, focus in the last couple years,
Okay.
especially maybe the last 6 months. I feel like people are talking about sleep a lot more than they used to. And also, I feel as I'm in my 30s now, sleep I can tell a lot more. Like when
Yes.
you're like 22,
Yes.
you can do whatever you want, but not anymore. So sleep's a huge thing. Even down to like not today, of course, because it's disgusting outside, but I try to, even sunlight, getting sunlight in my eyes, like I try to do that when I can, if the time allows. So that, high protein, whole foods focused diet, I of course enjoy the things that I want and love in moderation. Overall movement, steps wise, it varies depending on time of year and like goals it can change with, but I'm usually somewhere in the 10,000 realm. So love going for walks, just, like y'all talk about, just getting in movement, overall movement. I do resistance train and weightlift, 4 times a week right now is the schedule. Let's see. I feel like those are like the big physical pillars.
Yep.
So yeah,
They
it's
definitely
funny.
sound familiar.
Yes, it's the basics, right? They're the best.
And that's what I love about conversations with you, Mary Jo, and other like-minded people is
Hmm.
this isn't like a new fad or a new
No.
diet that we're just going to spin on and try to make money. It's like, hey, we're just coming back to the foundations, what
Yeah.
we say are God's design of health that we have
Hmm.
incorporated. When you go back to Genesis, like God made a natural sleep wake cycle that we
Yeah.
are to sleep when it's dark and wake when it's light, and
Yep.
he made every tree bear or fruit bearing tree for us for food. It literally says
Hmm.
that. And then we're supposed to subdue the earth and rule the earth on our feet and moving, like all that stuff. So
Yeah.
there's a scriptural backing to it. I love
I
that.
love it.
What are some other non-physical habits that you try to
Hmm.
prioritize?
So, and I feel like y'all's last podcast was on this, the spending time with the Lord every day.
Yeah.
That is huge priority for me. And that, it was hard for a long time to get into the habit of that. But what did you say one time on one of the podcasts that it was, start where you are, not where you should be. Is
Yeah.
that a you phrase? I love that. I think it applies to so many areas, but yes, that's a huge priority for me. I like to do it in the morning. I'm an early bird.
Yeah.
So that's very, very important. Let's see, as far as, Mark and I, we love, of course, spending, quality time together, whenever we can. And thankfully we're able to do that with, good schedules and all that kind of stuff as far as work goes. So trying to think anything else. Prioritizing connecting with people, all the staples
Yeah.
of like that is just
Yeah.
important. And really connecting, not just the surface level things. I think social media also, this just kind of a random side note, we've moved around a lot in our marriage, and even with having a business that's heavily, has basically solely been based on social media for the majority of the time, social media kind of creates this weird, not this, because this is cool. Like I feel like,
Sure.
video chats are connecting, but there is
Sure.
it's like you have interaction, but not like connection, if that makes sense. And I think that's a huge issue today is people
Yeah.
feel like they're socializing because they are maybe commenting with people or messaging people and
Yeah.
stuff. And it's not the same though as in-person
Yeah.
communication. So just a random side note.
I was reading and researching. I think I was listening to something just to piggyback off what you said, that with the digital age, especially with social
Yeah.
media, that rarely do we experience genuine community
Yeah.
because we constantly have our phone and we're distracted.
Mm-hmm.
We're not fully present, but rarely do we experience actual silence and solitude
Mm-hmm.
that we can rest and recharge our mind and our soul because we're always connected to our phone.
Always. Yeah.
So it's this false sense of community that I'm connected to 1,000 Facebook friends or I
Mm-hmm.
have 10,000 Instagram followers, but yet I can't name the 3 people that deeply know me, like on a
Right.
soul level.
Yes.
And then the other side is I wake up, look at this, I go to sleep looking at this, and I'm just connected to this glowing rectangle that's my
Yeah.
appendage 24/7.
Right.
And I never actually create space to listen to the Holy Spirit.
Right.
I just scroll Instagram,
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
you said, we need to just think about I mean, that could be a whole separate
It
podcast.
could, you should do it at some point.
Yes.
with
So yeah,
somebody.
we could.
So,
Maybe that's part 2 of this
there
conversation
you go. There you
of social media and our
go.
health.
Mm-hmm.
As we're kind of rounding third and finishing
Mm-hmm.
up this conversation,
Yeah.
Mary Jo, what does the future hold for Mary Jo? What's the vision? What does life look like now? What are you guys working towards? Obviously, you and Mark are married and have plans and stuff. Just kind of give us a snapshot.
Yes. Well, and I know we had talked about this, and I can briefly share, and if you want to ask questions, you can.
Sure.
So with my business, it had kind of taken a little bit of a, not hiatus, but a little bit of a backseat over the last couple of years. And I had shared this on my social media if people wanted to hear more about it there too, with infertility struggles that we started having like 2021-ish, I guess, is when we found, we started doing some testing and things like that. So we had started trying to obviously have kids, and we're not going to be able to have biological children. And so even from like other fertility perspectives, like adoption really is our only option for our,
Sure.
we have a very unique situation, but
Sure.
So that kind of, even looking at health and all of that kind of threw a wrench into things as far as I really had to go through. Last year was very much a period of grief for me, of kind of dealing with it all, I think. And a period I'd never really experienced before of having to kind of deal with that.
Sure.
And so kind of coming out of that, just because it's been a time I very much like God had to bring me through, if you will. Future wise, we're not really sure in a lot of ways. I think like adoption's on the table, but we're still, I feel like, just not quite there into taking like full action yet. And then as far as business, I think I needed some time to step away a little bit to kind of just heal, I guess.
Yeah.
And to getting back to, I had a friend one time explain it to me, of just certain things like, and she was even talking about specifically like serving the Lord and doing certain things, like making sure that, or knowing when it's time to take a step back when like your joy is kind of gone in certain ways. Like you need to maybe deal with some, because we were talking specifically about grief. And I thought that was a great way to explain it, because it was just, and it's not wrong, to need to take a step back sometimes. So I think that's kind of the space that I was in for a little bit, but I think I mentioned this to you. I feel like I've been coming out of a fog with it, and, remembering, or just maybe just it's time like to get back to things of, putting more into working with more people again and that sort of thing. So I guess that's kind of the very non-specific future that we have.
No, that's great. And I appreciate you just being so real and vulnerable and sharing with that. I cannot imagine just that journey and hardship and grief. I give you full permission to answer anything or answer nothing. But I would love to, just from a health perspective and a personal perspective, and even just like as a piece of encouragement for people listening that can definitely relate themselves or a family member or marriage or something. It's hard because here you are pursuing health and controlling everything you can control, right? We just talked about sleep, eating clean, protein, water, resistance training, steps, like all these things. But yet it feels like you can't control your body, right? And it feels like out of our grasp. Is like, what the heck, God? It's like, I'm doing everything I should and I'm following you. It's like, I can't imagine just the roller coaster of emotions there. Looking back at it now, what are some things that you learned throughout this process?
Yes. Oh, well, this is fun. And this kind of takes it full circle a little bit, going back to the control piece, because it's definitely been a struggle. But it also, the biggest lesson that I feel like it ends up being that I'll get to, is because of all of it. So that's the good thing. So, but I will say, like, so throughout the whole process of when it started, one other little side thing that also happened is I injured my neck. And so I was out of the gym completely for over a year. Like, and all of this was happening at the same time. So talking about control and feeling like a lot of the levers I had kind of held for a long time. And a stress outlet, honestly, was a little bit taken from me. And so there was, it was a place of a lot of brokenness, because I felt like what, and there's the temptation to be like, why is this happening to me? Like I can't get pregnant. I'm injured, and it took a long time to kind of figure out the best way through that. And thank God
Yeah.
we are through that now. But it was a very helpless feeling in a lot of ways, but also in a beautiful way, I guess, because it's like, what I can't do anything else other than be like, help,
Sure.
and
Sure.
so kind of relying on that, the habit y'all talked about being the most important one of, spending time with the Lord and like seeking after him, because I
Yeah.
had no other route to take really. And
Yeah.
so throughout the whole process with specifically the fertility stuff, I describe it as like, I was just really confronted with like, okay, do I believe this? Like, do I really believe
Wow.
that the Bible, like,
Wow.
because the Bible says God is good and my life right now feels not good. And
Sure.
so it was more, the Bible doesn't say it says he is good, period, And so it's not just, it isn't God's good when I get what I want kind of
Sure.
thing. And I had to really come to terms with that because it felt so, I don't know. It felt so, I felt so broken in the situation itself. So, I think it was a very good refining time for my faith, of course, because I was like, no, I do believe this. And it's not a punishment. That was another thing I felt like, why is God doing this to me? Like, that sort of thing. Like, we live in a broken world. Like, unfortunately, these things happen that are not, I don't understand. And then I guess it kind of just grew from there of me just having to trust that, like, no matter what the future looks like God is good, whether I get what I want or not, I guess is basically the gist of it. So
your faith is inspiring. Your response is extraordinary.
It took a long time to get there. So
sure.
Don't.
Hey, I want to riff on what you just said there though, because the main two motivations to take the inward journey is either pain or desire. And 90% of the time is pain.
Yes.
It's when someone's going through a hard time that they really internally look at themselves, at God. And sometimes it looks like deconstruction. People walk away from the faith. Sometimes people suffer with addiction because they're like, I'm going to give up my health and I'm just going to go this route.
Right.
But there's many options, but you chose to just continue the long obedience in the same direction, placing faith in Jesus, saying, okay, but it's hard. Like we said, that pain.
Yeah.
What did it practically look like to grieve and to grow through that pain? Because you said it took a year and you didn't have your physical body of the outlet of working out. You had the neck, but then you had the frustration of the infertility aspect. What did you practically do to move through and past that painful season?
Well, definitely. And I think it probably total took even longer than a year, just so that, because I do not want to make it look like I like excelled in this, because it really was like, it feels like an act of God that I feel like on the other side of it now. And it is, honestly, because it was just, obviously it was extremely difficult, but one thing that I did practically do is I would just cry a lot. And so I would just have to literally, because sometimes I would always worry, like, well, how do I need to pray right now? And sometimes I feel like people just need to hear, like, you don't really need to say anything sometimes. Like, I just would need to be like, God help me. Like, I literally, and just kind of go through those periods as they came. And then also too, I normally am a very like external processor. Like I, talk about whatever's going on, whether it's to Mark or to my family. And for whatever reason with this, I did kind of shove it down a little bit in some ways. And I don't know if it was because there was more pain associated with it than other things in my life, but I really did need to, the closest people in my life, I needed to tell them more of like how I was feeling, I guess. So they could be, there could be some connection over it. And that took a little while for me to do for some reason. Cause like I said, that's opposite of how I normally am. So, and then also just like understanding, like, grieving is like a real thing. Like we have to process things. And I think a lot of times the message is that you should never be sad, like from the world, like that you can't have, proper feelings of grief, like I had to go through that. And cause whether it's, and not that it's not ever warranted, but medication is like a huge thing. If you're sad, come get put on a pill type of thing. And I think for this specifically for me, like, I had to go through that so that I could get past it type of thing.
Wow.
And God can handle our grief. You know what I mean?
I like that.
So
I like that you said that.
So yes. So
a few things I'm hearing. you sat in it, like you didn't allow you initially you felt yourself suppressing it, but you said like you
Right.
cried a lot, that
Yeah.
you were able to feel that emotion,
Hmm.
but you said you brought it to Mark and your other trusted community, your family, so you're able to
Hmm.
process it, so that communal aspect of just processing that, um and then obviously the surrender part to the faith part as well.
Hmm.
And I think another important one is just time. You gave it
Yes.
time. You didn't rush it.
Right.
That you can't rush grief. Sometimes
Mm-mm.
it's months, sometimes it's years.
Right.
Like you said, it was more than a year, and
Hmm.
it comes up and down, and it comes in waves, and it might recycle itself. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
sometimes people in adulthood just feel the grief of some traumatic experience in childhood. Like
Right.
it's crazy how it suppresses, then it comes back.
Yeah.
But like we say, just don't rush it, and just that's why the other non-physical habits are so important to a truly
Hmm.
healthy life, of cultivating community and decreasing stress and embracing purpose, of just we need that space
Yeah.
to process and feel and not suppress those emotions.
Hmm.
um Mary Jo, as we kind of wrap up just maybe this chapter and kind of end this conversation,
Yeah.
let's say someone's listening that is struggling with one aspect, whether it's fertility or another health aspect.
Hmm.
um, what's some piece of encouragement you would leave them with?
Ooh, okay. I may break it up a little bit, but I'll be quick. So I feel like if it's for just like even taking action on things like that y'all talk about all the time with habits and stuff, I think not having to do everything at once. I think your advice with just like taking small steps is the best thing that you can do. And even as that relates to grief and going through something difficult,
Sure.
there were times I felt pressure to do all the things I knew how to do,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I had to be okay with I took a walk today, or I've at least been able to take this action, or
Yeah.
I chose a healthy meal, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And so and if people are struggling with fertility, because it's such a hard thing, and a lot of people can't talk about it, but I do think if you can find
Yeah.
somebody trusted to talk about it with, like, obviously that's part of my thing, like, is kind of getting that
Right.
out. And
Right.
knowing that they're not alone. Like, people are kind of afraid to talk about it. It's a very weird dynamic, but a lot of people do struggle. And it looks different for everybody, but especially if you're a believer, like, God has not abandoned you. He is there, and
Amen.
he can
Amen.
he can carry you through it. And the grief doesn't mean you don't believe in him. That was another thing for me, coming to terms with the God is good. I just, life is hard, but he will bring you through, and he's worth trusting, and he is who he says he is. So
That is
yeah.
so good. I had a seminary professor one time tell me, where there's life, there's hope.
Yeah.
That if you are living and breathing, there
Mm-hmm.
is hope for you. That the moment you defer hope, I think there's a scripture that says like hope deferred makes the soul sick or something
Yeah.
like that. Like
Yes.
there's always hope,
Mm-hmm.
that even in the darkest moments, that we believe in a God that literally came back from the grave, that
Right.
everyone is hopeless, and
Right.
there's always hope because of the resurrection. So
Yeah.
Mary Jo, this has been gold. Thank you so much for your
Of
time,
course. Thank
your
you.
vulnerability, your insight, your wisdom. Is there any last minute things you'd want to share with your listeners, our listeners, anybody in general? Just some main takeaways or encouragement?
I don't know. Oh gosh. I don't know. Start small, trust God. It all ties together. What you're doing, what y'all are doing, of making it the whole picture is so cool. So I thank y'all for starting that and giving it like structure, because it's hard to put it all together,
Yeah.
and helping people find direction, because it's such a confusing like world out there,
Yes.
So
Yes, it
in
is.
the fitness health realm, so it's easy to get sucked into weird or things that aren't going to lead you where you want to go. I'll say it like
Yes.
that.
Yes.
So,
That's so true.
mm-hmm.
All right. We're going to be done in 90 seconds. I have
Okay.
some fun last minute lightning round would you rather questions that are
Oh,
just
fun.
non-related to anything. You have to
Okay.
go top of the cuff, just gut reaction. Okay.
Love it.
Would you rather always be hungry or itchy?
Oh my gosh.
You gotta
Hungry.
go quick.
Hungry.
Hungry. Would you rather go get Mexican or go to a steakhouse?
Steakhouse.
Steakhouse. Crunchy or smooth peanut butter?
Smooth.
Would you rather be sponsored by Nike or Reebok?
Oh, Reebok.
Reebok. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Would you rather? Ooh, three-parter. Would you rather be a famous actress, musician, or athlete?
Athlete.
athlete.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Would you rather only be able to sleep 2 hours at a time or 12 hours at a time?
Oh gosh. 12.
I think I'm with you there.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, oh, this is a crazy one. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck?
um, one horse-sized duck.
One horse-sized duck. She's taking it down. All right, three more. Would
Okay.
you rather have a mullet or a mohawk?
Mohawk.
Would you rather fly or teleport?
Teleport.
Last one. Would you rather have bad buck teeth or a bad underbite?
Oh my gosh.
I know that's bad.
Oh, buck teeth, I think.
Buck teeth. That's great.
I do.
Mary
That's
Jo,
awesome.
we just like to end on something fun. I
I love
appreciate
it.
you so much.
Of
Where
course.
where can the listeners find you or connect with you, or how can they be in touch?
Yeah, Instagram is the main thing. I feel like my
Okay.
handle, everything is Wellness by Mary Jo. My website is wellnessbymaryjo.com, but Instagram's I feel like the big hitter.
Cool.
Yep.
Wellness by Mary Jo.
Wellness by Mary Jo.
Mary Jo, this has been awesome. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank
And listeners,
you.
thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on another episode. See ya.
Bye.